I don't know. Okay. So I'm recording this on my phone. I will be looking at myself a lot because I do that. That's just me. I just stare at myself a lot. If I can see myself, it's just me. So don't worry about it. um, yeah, I'm recording this on my phone because my webcam is absolutely terrible, and I didn't want this to be like just a drawing um, thing. I also have prepared a little bit of a script because I cannot write, I cannot like speak for shit, as you can tell already. I just can't speak. Also, I've been trying to study a different language, so my English is all over the place at the moment. Anyway, okay. So I want to talk about, um, which is pretty much the big reason why I haven't like been online, apart from the fact that I start university in 2 months. Um, again, going back to university to study. Um, like gender. I hope to do a PhD. Hopefully, I'll do a PhD on gender and things like that. Anyway, um, what was I talking about? Holy shit. Yeah, so I haven't been posting online. I haven't been streaming or anything. I haven't even done. I've done art in my free time, but I haven't been posting it on my Instagram or anything. I mean, a lot of it just got to me, but at the same time, like, I've been dealing with my own shit, my own stuff. I've been dealing with my own stuff. uh, so I wanted to make this video just because, like, I I've been watching a lot of trans YouTube again, just to like help the thoughts go around in the head, and like also a lot of affirmation. A lot of affirmation comes from, you know, seeing people and things like that. I've also seen like loads and loads of detransitioning, like as a trans, because this for me, like I'm an AFAB. um so what I'm doing, I don't like to put labels on it, which I'll be talking about my little script. uh, but uh so I'll be taking testosterone. uh So a lot of the stuff that I watch is like FTM, like trans male um, YouTube, and a lot of that is to so like the whole turfist, or as I prefer to say, fartist, which means so a turf is a trans exclusionary radical feminist, and a fart, which is the new name because we don't that's not feminism. We don't call it feminism. The new name is feminism appropriating radical transphobia. All right, decent. I love it. Shout out to my friend who told me that like 6 months ago. We need to appropriate. Anyway, so yeah, I've been online and like I've seen a lot of um, yeah, like why I transitioned or what I regret about transitioning, and I think a lot of it is like clickbaity um stuff. I'm not. I've seen not all of them. Like a lot of the time, I can't be bothered to watch them because I just cannot deal with that sort of rhetoric. But I've watched a lot of like what I regretted or the dangers of testosterone or whatever, just because just to really hammer it in my head. I have like this weird torture mechanism where I just really need to hammer it in my head that this maybe I don't want to be doing this. It doesn't work obviously because I'm awesome. And this is what I should be doing. Anyway, um, yeah, I've just seen a lot of like that negative sort of thing, and usually in the videos they end up talking about how well they don't regret actually transitioning. There are just parts of it that they wish that they knew, or like side effects that they wish they knew, which is just being educated on that sort of like level, which I personally, uh, well, I've spent like 7 years out as a trans person. I came out first as a trans man, and then I came out after like 2.5 years as non-binary. Um, but like you know, even recently, like I've still been learning stuff, but none of it was really that new. Like the only thing that I didn't realize was actually really bad was the hot flashes, which some people don't get. But it's just when your hormone levels are changing a lot, and you get like hot flashes, and I don't really know what that specifies. Like apparently it's quite like painful. Well, I'll update you on that because I'll be going on it. Woo. But like there are ways you can help it. Apparently, like drinking lots of water, making sure you're taking if you're taking like tester gel or whatever, make sure that you're taking it at regular intervals rather than missing out. Or but like if you get injections, there isn't really so much you can do. I don't think. So anyway, that's the only thing that like I thought I would share that if you're watching this and like you don't know, like apparently it can be quite debilitating, which is interesting. But I'm sure if you do go through that, like you should probably talk. Well, you should definitely talk to whoever's prescribed you, and you can make sure that you're doing tests to see what like levels your hormones are at, and maybe there's something that you can sort out. You know. Anyway, so this is supposed to be about like the fact that you don't need dysphoria to be trans, um, and just like my experience, and why I'm so pissed off. Like, I'm an angry trans, um, but yeah, like why I'm so pissed off. I don't think I can put it all into this video because I mean I'm already rambling. I'm gonna try and edit this down, but should definitely be editing out that part. Anyway, yeah, like about like my experience and like the whole thing. Just I guess just adding to the stories because you can never hear too many stories. Sometimes it's good to just spend days and days on social media, like seeing people's stories and listening to what they have to say and things like that. Um, and I thought I'd just update. Like I've been obviously feeling really guilty about not updating people and live streaming and everything, but like I just don't want to bring like a sad sort of atmosphere to my platform. Like I feel like I should compartmentalize that as when online. Like I don't in my life. I don't care. Uh, Especially since I'm going actually like through quite a hard time at the moment. Not it's like nothing really horrible, but it's just a lot of waiting and just sort of ignoring things. So it's really hard to just put on a happy face and just be happy because you're not, like you're just coasting. Anyway, um, lots of rambles, lovely rambles. So I would like to like because if I'm not doing live streams and things like that, I'd still like to update people and like at least just get my story out there if people need that. Um, Even though not many people are gonna see this, uh, like maybe someone like me will. Uh, if some people's stories helped me come to a bit better of an informed decision. No, everyone's stories are completely different, so like everything that I'm gonna say is just about me. It's not about anyone else. And it's about like generalizations. Probably there's probably some generalizations in there. Like it's bad. I try not to, but like that's a whole different philosophical discussion about generalizations. But yeah, So my little story, other brilliant. So I do have a little script. I mentioned before, like I've already mentioned quite a bit of it already. um, where we go right. So I have experienced dysphoria. Um, for the first like 2.5 years, I came out as I was going into college, so that was when I was 16. And the way I came out was really weird. Like I just sort of went to the open day at college, like because I was into cosplay and role playing at the time. Um, I just role played. I sort of cosplayed Simon from the Mortal Instruments, because that's just it's just a shirt and glasses. And I just asked people to call me him. I can't really remember much of that day. I don't really remember much of a lot of my childhood, but it was nice, and I realized sort of, wow, okay, maybe this, maybe that. But admittedly, I didn't know the things that I know now, which I don't think is justification to say that I should not have, you know, transitioned back then. I don't think it's justification to say that I shouldn't have gone on testosterone, and I don't think anyone was justified, at least in the way that they try to say to me, like, no, don't do it. Like, you're making a mistake. Just wait longer. Like the way, at least, that they said it. I'm not gonna say saying it outright because worrying about whether you're going to um, make the wrong decision uh, is obviously very valid. Like there are lots of things to take into consideration, like how much money do you have? If you're going private, um, is this just a cover for like a different kind of issue that you have? Like if you have like OCD or something like that. Like I know someone who has OCD, and like the OCD sort of mixed in with the gender identity, and uh, like they don't regret transitioning or anything because it taught them a lot about this kind of about just themselves and like their OCD and things like that. But it was sort of like a misstep in a way. Like that's one thing. Like there is no regret necessarily going on testosterone or hormones or anything, apart from the physical changes, which you might get a low voice, like not like it takes a while. You know what I'm saying? Like it takes a while for things to happen. Not too long. Like some things will come fast, some things won't. But you do have time, even when you're going through the changes, to just say, nah, I'm not down for this. You don't need to keep on them. And that's one thing, like the social pressure to stay on hormones, because if you detransition, then you're just another statistics for the turfs, for the farts, to use in the rhetoric. Ugh, I can't. And then like just like other kinds of pressure. Like if you fought your family really hard to get these sort of gender affirmation and things like that, and you're like having doubts, which is really normal to have doubts. You have doubts about everything. Like you just don't have any leeway to just see like how things are. And I think this sort of like fartist rhetoric of saying like pressuring young trans people not to transition or like go anywhere near transitioning is actually quite like a backfiring thing, because not allowing someone to explore their gender identity and saying, like being very rigid, at least in who is trans and who isn't, like you must have gender dysphoria, you must stay on hormones, just means that people are just gonna like ignore parts of themselves. Yeah, it just creates like this area of doubt, um, which sort of backfires. Like doubt can be just as harmful as like anything, but in like really complicated ways. Like you can doubt being trans, um, in one way, like just from my experience, you can doubt being trans in one way. Like, do I really want to transition? Um, and just end up not transitioning, or detransitioning or whatever. Um, then you can doubt it to such an extent where you are actually happy going through with it, but because of the doubt, like you're just forced into a position, and the societal like cultural ideologies that surround you, like you're just forced into a decision. You're just forced into an existence of lying to yourself. Oh, I was forced into an existence of lying to myself, where I just wasn't uh, able to even recognize authenticity or anything like that. I so I've historically experienced dysphoria before I came out as non-binary. Oof, boy, we I feel like we need a better word to say than came out, or like self-identify or identify, um, because it infers that you weren't always who you were. Just because you're transitioning or just because you detransition doesn't mean that you've changed really at all. It's just the societally enforced gender that has changed, like the way that people see you and the way that you prescribe to the labels, and then also sometimes, yeah, like the way that you act to make other people happy and things like that. If you're a trans man, you might overcompensate, not overcompensate, but compensate for things that you feel like you need to do, or like society is telling you that you need to do to like fit in as a trans man. So it's not like you really change. It's not like, you identify yourself because you are you. You can't identify as something other than yourself, can you? I don't know. You can, but I feel like it's not a very good example. Um, so dysphoria often changes with like the way that you see yourself, the way that society is around you. Like, everyone exists in their own society. Everyone grows up with their own culture. And like the culture that I grew up in, is like this Western Christian, white centric, cis, patriarchy, hetero, whatever. um, so like I grew up in the binary genders, like complete ignorance of intersexuality, isn't that what it's called? Intersex, like people, um, or like anything, just anything. So the way that we exist in this sense totally destroys anything other than the two defaults, right? Uh, which again, like this impacts the way that you feel dysphoria, like you see dysphoria, because to be dysphoric, like there are so many like categories for dysphoria that you need to sort of hit to have dysphoria or to win dysphoria. I don't know. Like if you're an AFAB like me, and you got tits and ovaries and periods and like if I'm experiencing gender dysphoria, I have to really hate my tits and my vagina and my ovaries and my periods and stuff like that, and I don't. I hate my voice. I hate like aspects of my face. Which is why I stare at myself so much, because I'm like, how am I looking? Um, there was, which I would like to talk about, like how I can tell that I've got dysphoria, or rather, the kind of dysphoria that I have, how I know that I'm trans, like, but I don't vehemently hate every single like hour of the day. I don't really like even 1 hour of the day. I feel uncomfortable, yeah, but that's mainly due to the society that I'm surrounded by, like the culture that I'm surrounded by, like the gender enforcement that other people give to me, that they enforce on me. So yeah, like the dysphoria that I get is mainly only from the way that people view me. Like Judith Butler always said, like, famous Judith Butler, that gender is performative and blah blah blah. And like, you can think whatever you want about that. So just to clarify, like gender being performative is like you put on an act of gender to appease other people, how they see you, like the social genders, like if you're a trans man acting masculine or whatever that means. um Me laughing at my own jokes. It's not even a joke. I'm just nervously laughing. The problem with that, yeah, the problem with obviously like social genders and things like that with dysphoria, it's bad, it's unhealthy. It's just not good at all. Like any kind of socially enforced gender, any kind of social gender, obviously, like in a way, it's good because it means that some of us can recognize how we identify, what we're comfortable with, and things like that. But it doesn't need to exist for us to be comfortable with ourselves. If it didn't exist, we would just do the things that we want to do, like you would just get the operations that you wanted, or you would wear what you wanted, and blah blah blah. There's a lot of debate around that, and like I'm not about to say like I'm not about to say that gender in and of itself doesn't exist at all, because it does. Like the material effects on our society, uh, completely valid for people to identify as a binary gender, or was one way or the other. I personally identify as non-binary, and I hate the word. Especially, like, I don't care, like, it's being a third gender. Like, people can do whatever they want with my gender that doesn't exist. Uh, but yeah, like, no. For me, gender doesn't exist, and I'm not about to enforce that ideology on other people. Like, what's the point? It's just so evil. Imagine how evil you have to be to enforce the fact that gender does not exist on people. If they're not causing any harm by it, I mean, like, because I mean, once you've reached the point where gender is an immaterial thing, it's not defined by your genitalia or anything like that. After that, like, you can do whatever you want. It's a social thing. It exists socially. Social constructs don't actually exist, like capitalism, like money, but it still has a material effect on the world around us. Capitalism does exist socially, it has material effects on the world around us. God exists. Because you can see the effects of God. No, people do that in the name of God, don't they? In the name of capitalism. Ooh. So capitalism doesn't exist, but capitalist people do exist. Oof. Spicy. Okay, alright. Alright, absolute ramble. What was I going to talk about? So, like, in a way, the way that I stopped feeling dysphoria was by, yeah, like, first of all, learning that gender isn't a material thing. Not that I didn't already know that, but like it was through like studying gender theory, like Judith Butler, Luce Irigaray. I can't remember like Helena Sisu. I don't know. I can't remember like half of them. Be Ruby Rich. Just learning how about like social constructs and critical theory and things like that. That's how I sort of first of all started to think about what my gender was in terms of not being a trans man. And then also, I just like, after a point, so I became sexually active. Newsflash. Like, I can't remember how long ago, like 4 years ago. And for me, like, sex was a huge part of my dysphoria. Like, I didn't believe, I can't really remember so much actually of like what I was going through before. I didn't believe in the, yeah, I didn't believe that I would enjoy sex as a woman, as a woman, you know, as a person with a feminine. It's not feminine. As a person with the characteristics that I do have, which is, you know, boobas. So boobas and a vagine. Like I just didn't think that I would enjoy it. Like I didn't think that, because I struggle with sexual uh, attraction. I don't really feel sexually attracted to anyone at all, which could change. Like when I go on tea and you know get all this sorted out. Sorry, I'm just changing. It's hard. I have you stacked on a bunch of books. Anyway, stop avoiding the topic. So yeah, I became sexually active, and so I didn't have that reason, that worry in my head anymore that people wouldn't be interested in me. Because for some reason I was worried about like people not being interested in me, people not loving me. Like that's just a whole thing like that I do. Uh, so yeah, I was worried about like people wouldn't be attracted to me. I would never be like handsome, ugly. I would never be beautiful, you know, attractive in anything. So when I became sexually active, even though it was absolutely traumatic and nothing really that good came of it, which is another thing. Like the way that I went into this thing did really. I don't really want to go into detail about it. I might do like sometime later, but it didn't. It didn't help me discover anything about myself. It sort of just pushed me further into the closet. Uh, because at a point I just sort of switched, like my brain just sort of switched, and I thought that uh, the only way that I would ever be loved is by being cis, and like I didn't immediately know that I thought that. Like I didn't have thoughts going around in my brain saying, you know, the only way that you're gonna be loved is if you're cis. Like, you know, you won't be loved if you're trans or anything like that. It was just, you know, people actually showing affection to me. And like obviously like me latching onto that, like my body just latching onto my brain. I didn't do it voluntarily. Like I hate people. I didn't I you know, I only really did it as a sort of form of like SH. I only really did it as a way to get back at myself or to ignore or push down emotions, you know. And I just put myself in like dangerous situations. I didn't put myself in the I just ignored the fact that it could be dangerous, and a lot of the times it was because I'm a woman. I have breasts, boobas, breasts, and blah blah blah. Like, so, uh, this sort of thing like just kept pushing me back and back into the closet. Like, oh, I just had a realization on camera, just talking to you. Like, probably one of the biggest things about it was every single time something bad happened to me, um, the fact that all these bad things happened to me, like abusive stuff and things like that, because I was a woman, and it was done like the patriarchy to a woman or to a female body. uh I think that sort of pushed me into thinking subconsciously or whatever, no one would ever listen to me if I transitioned about the things that I've been through as a woman. Like, I wouldn't have people to talk to about my feminine, female, whatever experiences. Um, which is obviously an issue in and of itself. It always was. Like, coming out as trans, like, a lot of the time you're rejected from things. People don't necessarily do it intentionally. It's one reason that I actually came out as non-binary in the first place, because people weren't listening to me about like uh, the struggles that I wanted to help out with and things like that. Because like people saw me as a man, which they should have, but like at the same time, that doesn't negate the fact that I have had feminine experiences and I can talk about them. Anyway, so yeah, I was afraid that because like all of these bad things were happening to me. It was just like a cascade of patriarchal version of power. um, so every single time something like that happened, I sort of just hid more and more and more, and like the walls just got built. Like I just didn't have a choice. It was the way that I survived, in some ways. Um, so like that has absolutely nothing to do with gender dysphoria, really, but I had stopped experiencing gender dysphoria around about when I just became sexually active, and I think these things happening to me um, just sort of forced me into continuing to go down that path, and ignoring just my potential happiness, because the only thing that mattered was my sort of survival in a way. Like, I don't want to say that I couldn't have survived as a trans man, because I probably, like, I would have. uh, like, if I'd have stopped uh letting people walk on me and things like that, but it just wasn't a thing that I did. And here I am. So, what happened after that? What did I? So I talked about. So I've talked about like what made me a part of like what made me stop uh, looking for to transition, and I mentioned that becoming sexually active has it sort of lessened my dysphoria, because I realized that people could love me in a way, whether that was the way that I should be loved or not, but that was the way. But I don't really have an explanation as to why I just sort of stopped hating my chest. I sort of learnt about feminism, and I met a bunch of strong like AFABs. It just sort of made me realize I didn't need to hate myself the way that I did. I didn't need to conform to gender. Oh, sorry. Didn't need to conform to gender stereotypes. And I could just exist with what I had and still be strong in the way that I wanted to be strong, even though I wasn't at all, because I was still struggling through my own stuff. I've had this entire year of the pandemic, if not more, to take myself through that and think about things. And I still have plenty of time in the future to think about that. Like, it's not an issue for me. But there was other things that. So I don't think I actually just even looked at my body. Like, I just sort of realized that, yeah, I was my body is nice. Like, my body is beautiful. I look like a Grecian goddess. Like, it's decent. I'm a little marble statue. Just because you don't hate your body doesn't mean that you can't be happy with something else. Like, there are plenty of things in life that we can cope with, but just because we can cope with it doesn't mean that we wouldn't be like a million times happier with something else. Keep on falling over. God damn it. I'm having struggle. Like, I'm struggling to even get this out. Like, never mind. Just phone keep on falling over. Yikes. So I think now I've explained like moderately how, like, a bit, just sort of, like, sprinkled a bit, like glazed over a bit of trauma and sexual experience and things like that. I'd like to actually like talk about dysphoria. It's like 40 minutes into recording. So how do I know whether I'm trans or not? Right? How do we know? Well, one thing is, there is no trans body. Not that that's such a basic thing, but there is no one way to be trans. Like, there are so many different ways to be trans. Like, everyone is their own individual, and like gender is basically just an individual thing. Like, labels just let us communicate with each other in some ways. So we've talked about like the material effects of gender and all that. Like, so this is, again, like I mentioned, like one way in which you can be helped by gender stereotypes. Like, just doing masculine things or feminine things, or neither of those things. Like, just being an alien. It can help you realize sort of like what you want to be and like who you are. The thing about like what I've experienced is, even though I don't have dysphoria, like the things that I want to change are all physical. Like, me myself, I mean, obviously, like, you don't want to change yourself. If you wanted to change yourself, like your personality, you do it. Really, I mean, like, I imagine there is some qualms about that. Why do I have to be such a fucking philosopher? Just get on with it. Yeah, so I still want to change like physical things about myself, to be happy, to the world, to not to the world, like to be happy with myself, which is one reason why I found it so easy to exist in other people, like to just be consumed by the other people, uh, previously, and that's how I coped with things, and I just sort of shoved things to the back of my mind and forgot about them, like the gender dysphoria and things like that. Like, was just purely by like existing within other people. I want to exist within myself. You know, I want to be happy with myself, and that's one thing I suppose lockdown's great for, making you realize like how you really do see yourself and taking away that social aspect of going outside and then attaching everyone else, like how they see you and how whatever, like how you need to present yourself to be accepted, and obviously having that reward from society of being accepted, so you're encouraged to do that and then feeling good about it, but like not necessarily in the right ways. So yeah, so there are ways that I know that despite not having dysphoria, so the physical things, like, you know, obviously I want to, not obviously, but I mentioned this earlier, like wanting to change, or not wanting to change, but like wanting change to happen, and not wanting to look like this and sound like this for the rest of my life as I grow old. Like, I just don't want to. It's not nice. Which you know, like I previously thought that that was like a societally assigned thing. Like for ever since I was a tiny little baby, a little wee babe, I've been told, oh, women are really ugly when they grow old. Men age like wine, women age like milk is like was like something that I was told a lot. And like, you know, women are ugly when they get older because they wear so much makeup, and like it ruins their skin and things like that. Like, so I previously thought that that was like a just all because of like the misogyny that I experienced growing up, and like that was just like my generic transness, and like I'm trans because I experienced misogyny growing up, which is the generic TERF view, and that would be the only reason you're trans. Oof. But no, no, this is not true, because I've had more than a year living on my own, essentially like existing by almost entirely just myself for an entire year. So I've had no one else to look at me or to regard me. I've only been regarding myself. And even now, like I have a mirror and I'm just staring at myself in it. Like the body that I have is just not what I identify with. Um, I just don't identify with, you know, like the things that I have, like my voice. If I don't talk and I imagine my voice, it does not sound like what comes out. And like, especially listening to it back, it's horrible. I don't think that I have an ugly voice or anything. It's just not mine. It's just it. Like you don't like. I'm graced with what I have, but like this is not mine, and I wouldn't be happy to keep it. Like knowing that I could be happier. Why put up with that? Like that's half of the issue. Like just because you've learned to cope with something doesn't mean that you shouldn't change it. Because like what level of happiness is normal then? you know, like I can't remember the last time I was really happy. Like I've been happy in so many different ways. I've had an amazing life already. Like the last 4 years of my life have been really really hectic, and well, the last 6 years of my life. But like there's that weird, like I have like weird memories of like being a really really happy person before puberty, and then like 1 year after I hit puberty, I remember distinctly like feeling, I don't know whether I actually did, but feeling like I forgot how to smile. Um, and looking back now, like I'm talking to a camera and I'm just therapizing myself, being my own therapist. But looking back, like I feel like that might have been the point at which I've realized that life was not gonna be nice to me. Um, and I was gonna have to conform. Oh wow. Oh my god. I like obviously like being your own therapist is not a good thing, but also like no one knows you better than you do. And sometimes just going through things, it's one of the best ways. Obviously, hearing your own voice, being your own voice of reason is not necessarily good, but I have all my memories, I have all my emotions, and it's I don't think it's that far of a reach to say that you know that could have been something that I've totally uh, overlooked. It's just that at one point I remember like in primary school, this one point where I just felt just a weird emotion, like just like almost completely empty. Like I like one reason that I delayed all of this, and I thought about it so much. You know, I spent 7 years thinking about this. Is because I sort of just came out of the womb with like a big philosopher's beard, like smoking a philosopher's cigarette and a pipe. Is that a philosophy? I don't know what philosophers do. I'm supposed to be one. I don't know what they do. Um, but uh, yeah, like I remember my first existential crisis. I know it's an existential crisis. I have a degree. I have a degree in philosophy. I had my first existential crisis when I was like 7, and I did not stop having them like ever since. I did recently actually, but that's another conversation. So that's why I thought I owed it to myself to make sure that this was not just like some weird crisis sort of thing. Like I wasn't just obsessing over this. One thing is, it's 7 years long, and I existed without it in so many ways. Like I've existed in so many different forms, and yet I still continue to come back to this threshold of I either do it now or I just don't do it. Like, what's the point of not trying at least? But also, I'm not an indecisive person. Like, just because I think about things, mull things over, doesn't mean that I don't make decisions. And I don't. The only way that I have anxiety is when other people sort of enforce anxiety on me. Like society often enforces anxiety on people like us, like trans people, um, like saying that being transgender is a mental illness, like the fact that your local gender clinic on the NHS is like 7 years long wait to get like the first appointment, which is nothing. Um, like the fact that like most trans men detransition because like women are obsessed with like like that fucking toughest rhetoric, fattest rhetoric. But I'm not an indecisive person. I'm always the one that makes decisions, or rather, very often the one that makes decisions. Uh, when it comes down to group group outings, like I've worked on a farm and like I've had to make split second decisions to on how to like save lives of these like sheep. So yeah, like the ways that society sort of enforces things on us is ridiculous. Like the anxiety that you feel, I don't get anxious unless I'm around specific people, um just because of like their dynamics. And like a lot of people sort of try to make you feel anxious whether they do it willingly, knowingly or not. Like they enforce anxiety on you, and like society does it as well, like culturally. Like Catholic guilt, blah blah blah. um but I just wanted this to be authentic. Even though it's just a ramble, you can have it on in the background. If you're feeling alone, and my like occasional strong feelings about something will pop in that's completely unrelated, which I apologize for, and I try not to do that. But like, and, that voice in my head just says like, "Oh my God, Dorian, you should talk about this. You need to clarify this. People will want you to clarify this." Which is, fine. But anyway, like, what I like everything that I've spoken about. Like I said, like the way that I view myself, doesn't isn't not necess is not necessarily not dysphoria. But it's not the sort of mainstream view of dysphoria that people push. It's not the mainstream media's like dysphoria thing. It's not the dysphoria that you always hear about. It's not the dysphoria I had before I came out as non-binary, which I probably should have clarified really earlier in the video. It's just changed, like the way that I view myself. I'm happy with what I have, but I know it could be better, and I'm just coasting. You're just coasting. You just cope with what you have, and sometimes it's really easy to cope and not realize that coping is not healthy. Unhealthy coping. The mechanism, like, yeah, I mean, dysphoria doesn't always exist. Like, it comes and goes and goes and comes, and sometimes it goes and never comes back. Like, occasionally when I got really, really drunk and I had no dysphoria whatsoever at university, I'd just suddenly be hit with loads of dysphoria because, like, something like, because I get jealous of people a lot. Like, I get jealous of, like people who look like I want to look like, but like, you just feel like this sting in your stomach, like this pang in your stomach or whatever, and you're like, oh God. What do I do with this anxiety, with this nervousness? And that's like the sort of eternal crisis, and then you sort of go back to normal because like it's a lot to deal with, and there's a lot of money to spend, and the NHS sucks for trans people. Yeah, okay, so like the actual tip I have, from all of this is to, instead of focusing on gender dysphoria, is to focus on gender euphoria. Like, if you want a beard, or you think you might want a beard, do a makeup beard. If you buy a binder, maybe just do some tape, see how it feels. Safe tape, use that athletic tape. Like, try out whatever you think you're gonna be happy with. And a lot of like, just focus on the euphoria rather than the dysphoria if you don't experience that, or if you just want to try that out. Just because you don't have dysphoria doesn't mean that you don't have it easy. Like, just because you can cope with things as the way that they are doesn't mean that you don't deserve to be happy. There's just one sort of mantra that you have to keep, well, I have to keep on repeating to myself. And also, whenever I start having the doubts, like a little panic about, oh my God, like, this is completely wrong. Like, it's very momentary at the moment. I'm hoping I can get on testosterone as soon as possible because I just want to like have that voice in my head shut the fuck up. It's been 7 years. I'm allowed to try hard to get it that fast. But anyway, not that you're not allowed to. I just mean, I'm just shutting up that turf in the background of my head, like telling me what I'm doing is wrong. I should be back on track with things in 2 months when I start university. Like just the way that I've been existing at the moment, like it's basically hibernation. I've basically been hibernating, just trying to cope with things as they are. Uh, you know, you just put on the earmuffs and pretend that nothing exists. You like close your eyes and you just try and whisper to yourself that it's gonna be okay until everything's over. Yikes, that was depressing. But like that's just how things are sometimes, and I think a lot of the time, well, I mean, especially right now with the pandemic, that is sort of the only coping mechanism you have, like to just wait until you're ready, like you're at a place or a time, rather a place and time where you can finally just get on with things. Just be yourself. Oh, it'll happen, and you're not alone. I mean, the whole point of trying to upload this video was just trying to communicate a bit, but like I said, I don't wanna live stream or anything because I just don't want that to get like mixed up with the sad, you know, with the hibernation and the closing your eyes. Like, no. But if anyone wants to listen to a sad video about me complaining about things, you know, there's this. And I'm gonna have terrible anxiety about how terrible this video is for a very long time. Especially if no one watches it. And then if people do watch it, I'm just gonna have anxiety anyway, because people are watching it. um, but it's okay, I'm gonna edit it. I'm gonna edit down the awkward pauses. Okay, I know I've forgotten about a lot of things, but I can always make more videos. And hopefully as soon as I get tea, I can talk about, like, you know, the things that led up to that. Just have some nice times. Like, just be like, woo, testosterone, woo. And then put on some gains. Put on some gains. And maybe I'll like the sound of my own voice and I could listen to it whilst I fall asleep. But, goodbye. Thank you very much for existing. Look after yourself.